Good afternoon.
Arnold, will you take a second here? Arnold's about ready to start the meeting. I don't know, a lot of you don't realize this, but this is Arnold's last day on the planning board. He's been on the planning board for over 20 years. He was first appointed when Al Vase was mayor of Omaha. He was been on and off and on again. His wife Wanda is here this afternoon. Wanda made the comment that this is his third time of leaving the board, but this time it is official. And Wanda, welcome to you this day. And I thought we'd start, Trenton, if you wanted to start, and we'll make some comments. I know it's hard, but it's still Arnold.
Are we getting your resignation in writing this time? No, Arnold's been on there a long time, taught us all a lot, taught me a lot. Good conversation. He definitely has unique opinions, and you will be missed.
Well, I've also enjoyed the time sharing the board with you, Arnold. The insight that you bring over history is helpful. Even today, we had a case where there was some insight that you were able to bring to us from a prior case, and so that, and also your personality being a productive part of our board, we're going to be sorely missed.
Arnold, I've only been on for 6 months, but feel I've got to know you pretty well over the 6 months. You bring a very, very dynamic perspective to these meetings. The way you analyze things, I think, is extremely well done and well thought out. So that experience is going to be missed. People don't realize that all the years of experience that you bring to this means a lot. It does. It means a lot, and so that will be missed. Wish you nothing but the best in what you're going to be doing in your free time now, more free time. But I've enjoyed working with you on this board.
Thank you.
Arnold Tiff Nesbitt, as we like to refer to him in the back meetings. I just want to say thank you for everything you've done for the city of Omaha and for making my stay on the board as short. It's been a year. You've taught me so much, and I wish you so much success and happiness with your Wednesdays off now.
Thank you.
Arnold, it's been a pleasure working with you. After Van Deeb left the board, I had to have someone new to pick on, and you've been my target. So it's been fun working with you. I've learned a lot from you. As others have said, you've brought a lot of historical knowledge to the board and really taken us young ones under your wing and showed us really what we should be focusing on and how we should be moving the city forward, and I really appreciated that, and I had the honor of working with your wife as well, and now I can say I've had the honor of working with you. And Wanda, I'm sorry we're giving him back to you. We'll miss him. Now you can deal with him on Wednesdays. So. Take care. I hope you'll come back and visit us.
Wanda doesn't want to. I just want to say Arnold and I have been on the board, me not nearly as long as Arnold, but we've been on the board 7 or 8 years together, and for the first couple years I didn't know if Arnold and I were going to get along, because Arnold usually called me, instead of my name is Greg, he called me Gary, and so I didn't know if he liked me, but we've become good friends, and there's nobody I enjoy on this board more than Arnold. Gonna miss him. I thought I'd miss Van D, but I'm really gonna miss Arnold. Good luck to you, bud.
Thank you.
Well, Kevin, Eric wants to. Kevin.
There we go.
Eric
Gary,
wants
thank
to.
you,
Gary has a plaque and some things to say from the city.
Well, yeah, so Arnold, just as, on behalf of all planning department staff, city staff, for nearly 20 years of working with you and, all the different directors and different people that you've worked with here, we definitely, it's been a pleasure. We appreciate your unique perspective and, your opinions on matters, and always being truthful and consistent and honest with everybody. So if we could step out front, I do have a certificate of appreciation for you.
nearly 20 years of service.
Yeah.
Oh, have they done a dangerous thing. Allow me to say a couple of words here, and I'm going to be short, folks. First of all, I want to thank the members of the board for remembering their scripts as I wrote them. Everybody said the right thing. I really appreciate the fact that I've had the opportunity to serve the city of Omaha for as many years as I have. Most of you don't know that I'm a transplant to the city. I'm originally from Charleston, South Carolina, but I came here via New York. And one of the things that happened when I first got to Omaha, I worked at Union Pacific Railroad for 32 years before retiring. And the chairman at the railroad when I first got here was John Kennefick. And Mr. Kennefick asked that we as railroad employees do a little bit more than just pick up our checks from downtown here at the building, but participate as much as we could in the development and the well-doing of Omaha. So I decided to get active, and the first opportunity that came my way was to get on the planning board. And it's just ironic that as we were getting on the elevator, getting off the elevator this morning to go on our tour, I ran into Fred Conley. And Fred Conley was the guy who pushed me to apply for the planning board position many, many years ago. So it was an interesting day. I've had a wonderful time on the board. I've learned a lot. I hope I have contributed a lot. I've made a lot of friends. I've lost a few friends. But I've seen the city of Omaha grow tremendously. I have a lot of respect for the planning department, the planning people in the department. I think we have a group of professionals here that are second to none anywhere in the country. I'm going to miss my Wednesdays, first Wednesdays of the month here. It's been unique, but I won't have to give up my golf tee time now. I want to thank my wife for allowing me to spend some of these Wednesdays down here, and also infringing on our vacation planning time, because we always planned vacations around the first Wednesday of the month. So we won't have to do that anymore. And I also, I don't know whether she really knew that I was coming down here, because she's never seen me down here before. So it's a fact. I've been down here every Wednesday. See, I got these guys. So on that note, thank you. I thank the city of Omaha. I've worked for a number of mayors here, served on a number of mayors, and it's always been a pleasure. And it's an experience I will always cherish. So, on with the meeting. Thank you. I will now call to order the meeting of the Omaha Planning Board. The Planning Board members that are here today are Trenton Maggott, David Rosacker, Jeffrey Moore, Michael Pate, Christine Carnes, Gary Rosenbaum, Vice Chairman, and I am Arnold Nesbitt, Chairman. Members of the city staff that are in attendance today are Eric England, Acting Planning Manager, Mike Carter, Planning Board Administrator, Alan Thielen from the City Law Department, and Ricky Flock is the Secretary. Our rules of procedures are as follows. Notice of this hearing has been published. The board met this morning, reviewed all the cases, and visually inspected sites. Copies of today's agenda are located on the table in front. Please feel welcome to pick up one. The cases on the consent agenda will be heard first. Consent cases are perceived by the planning board to be non-controversial, have already been heard, or have been recommended for layover, and therefore will be read and voted on without the opportunity of your testimony. If you wish to testify, you may remove the case from the consent agenda. When each consent case is read, I will ask if anyone wants the case removed. If you do, please stand up and say so, and the case will be removed. The case will then be heard in its regular order, which appears on their regular agenda after we go through the consent cases. When the case is heard, you will have the opportunity to come to the podium, state your name and address, and give your testimony at that time. When hearing cases on the regular agenda, the board will first hear from the applicant, and the applicant states their case, and we will hear from the proponents, and then we will hear from the opponents. After both sides are heard, the public hearing will be closed, and no additional testimony will be permitted unless a board member requests additional information. When at the podium, please state your name, address, and whom you are representing for the record. Your testimony is very important to us. In the interest of time and courtesy to others, please be short and to the point. We will try to limit each case to 10 minutes. Those directly involved in the case, please speak first. We request that large groups select a spokesperson to represent that group, therefore eliminating repetitive testimony. When giving testimony, please provide new information and try not to repeat what has been previously said. We do ask that all speakers and others be treated with courtesy and respect. In that regard, please remain silent while seated, and please turn off your cell phones. Our decisions to approve, deny, or continue a case made here today will be forwarded to the City Council for another public hearing and final disposition by the City Council. Conditional use permits are an exception to this rule. The board's decisions made here today on conditional use permits are final and not forwarded to the City Council. Lastly, upon the advice of the Law Department, all communications to the board, members from attorneys or other interested parties should be transmitted through the Planning Department so that they are made part of the public record. The department will then transmit all information to the board as well as the rest of the public. Rezoning matters are an exception to this rule. Thank you. We will start with the consent agenda. First case on the consent agenda is case number 2. C11-12-245, Approval Orchard Valley, Inc. Request approval of a PUD Plan Unit Development Overlay District laid over from the 11/1/17 meeting. Location is 5110 Spalding Street. Does anyone wish to have this item moved from the consent agenda? Next item is number 7, C10-18-000, C12-18-004, Justin Shanahan, layover request, preliminary and final plat approval of the Ridges Replat 15, a minor plat inside the city limits rezoning from DR to DR and R4. Location south of Saddle Ridge Drive and east of 186th Street. Does anyone want this item removed from the consent agenda?
I so request.
Thank you. Number 7 is removed from the consent agenda. Next item on the consent agenda is number 10, C10-18-001, Robbie Ryan for approval. Request rezoning from GI to NBD. Property is located within an ACI overlay district. Location is 3001 Leavenworth Street. Does anyone want this removed from the consent agenda? Next item is number 11, C10-12-002 for approval. Robbie Ryan. Request rezoning from CC to NBD. Property is located within an ACI overlay district. Location is 3023 through 3029 Leavenworth Street. Does anyone want this item removed from the consent agenda? Next item is for approval, C10-18-007, Ed Thiel Habitat for Humanity, request rezoning from GC and R5 to R5. Location 3306 Decatur Street. Does anyone want this removed from the consent agenda? Next item is number 13, C8-18-008 for approval. Patrick Corbett requests approval of special use permit to allow indoor entertainment in a GI district. Location is 13837 Industrial Road. Does anyone want this item removed from the consent agenda? Next item is number 14, C14-18-009 for approval. Adjacent property owner requests vacation of the east-west alley between 68th Avenue and 69th Street, south of Farm Street, and abutting lots 22, 23, 40, and 41, Sunset Terrace. Does anyone want this item removed from the consent agenda? I will now ask for a vote on the items from the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion for consent agenda items for approval. Items 2, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14.
We have a motion and a second. Can I have a roll call for the vote, please?
Hannigan?
Yes.
Rosehacker?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Page?
Yes.
Carnes? Yes. Rosenbaum?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved.
First item on the regular agenda is item number 1. That is C10-16-310, C12-16-311, White Lotus Group LLC requests preliminary plat approval of Maple 180, a subdivision outside the city limits with rezoning from AG to DR and MU, laid over from the 3/1/17 meeting. Location northwest of 180th Street and West Maple Road. Will we hear from the applicant?
On behalf of the applicant, with me today, on behalf of the applicant, is Jason Thielen of E&A Consulting, the consulting engineers on this particular project. This is probably one of the longest layover cases you've ever seen.
Oh, it's been long.
Almost a year. So what we have here is, was formerly approximately 73 acres, if you recall, on the northeast corner of 180th and West Maple Road. What caused the delay was the Elkhorn Public School District filed a condemnation proceeding to condemn the north 44 acres of this property. So what you have before you today is really a revised preliminary plat that takes into consideration that eminent domain proceeding that took the north 44 acres. So what you have remaining is approximately 31 acres on the south. I think the total mixed-use acres is about 21 acres by the time you get rid of the outlots, which there are 3 of. You end up with about 21 acres of mixed-use area after you take into consideration the publicly dedicated roads and the outlots. So this, again, we're here for preliminary plat and rezoning approval. There's 8 lots within this mixed-use development, and there are 3 outlots that will be zoned DR, and they're primarily for tree mitigation, open space, and drainage purposes. And of course, you have the green corner at 180th and West Maple Road. We reviewed the recommendation report and find all the conditions acceptable, and we're really here for any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? Yeah, I know. Are there any other proponents? Are there any opponents? Hearing none, the case is closed. Any comments, questions? Mr. Eglin?
So yeah, as Larry mentioned, it's a smaller site than what previously came through. pretty standard comments from the city. So the recommendation is approval of the rezoning from AG to DR and MU, subject to an acceptable mixed-use development agreement to be submitted with the final plat, and approval of the preliminary plat, subject to the 21 conditions listed in the recommendation report being addressed with or prior to submittal of a final plat.
I move for approval of rezoning from AG to DR and MU, subject to an acceptable mixed-use development agreement to be submitted with the final plat, and approval of the preliminary plat, subject to the 21 conditions in the department's recommendation report.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Can I have a roll call for the vote, please?
Westchester?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Hayes?
Yes.
Hans?
Yes.
Rosenbaum?
Yes.
Snyder?
Yes.
Fisher?
Yes. Thank you. Next item is item number 3 under conditional use permits, and that's C7-10-007. Irvington Volunteer Fire Department requests approval of conditional use permit to allow safety services in a DR-ED district laid over from the September 6, 17 meeting. Location is northwest of 72nd Street and Northern Hills Drive. And we have the petitioner.
Good afternoon, Mark Westergaard, E&A Consulting Group, 10909 Mill Valley Road, representing the Irvington Volunteer Fire Department, and here with me tonight, or this afternoon, is Tom Townsend and Jason Lafayette. Just to give you a little history on this, if you recall, several months ago, we were here before you. There was an original conditional use permit that was approved for this site a few years ago. The fire department has been in the process of raising funds to construct the new fire station. They're still in progress with that, but in that interim period, the conditional use permit expired, requiring us to come back and file a new application. A small change in that application was the addition of a pavilion that you see on the south side here. That pavilion was originally proposed quite a ways to the south. It has been moved to the north to accommodate some concerns from the North Omaha Airport owner. And so we were before you with those two items, and the recommendation based on the discussion and the testimony at that time from the North Omaha Airport and from staff was to go back and get the formal FAA approval for these two facilities, one for the fire station and one for the pavilion, and hence basically the 3-month layover. So that was done, and the FAA issued the approval of those two facilities separately, which we have documented to the staff. And there was no issues with either one of those facilities. The FAA approved those without any conditions. So in the holiday period, the staff report was prepared, and the item, the condition of this item was that the fire station appeared to be acceptable at the pavilion. Staff, because of the testimony and the safety of the North Omaha Airport, requested that it be moved 75 feet to the west. And it kind of caught us by surprise. We were, and with all the holidays and things going on and the timeliness of the report, we did not have a chance to discuss this with staff, but I guess our feeling is that when we come before you and request to get FAA approval of a facility, and that approval is issued, that there really doesn't, that was the condition that was put upon us, and we have met that condition. And this proposed pavilion location should be acceptable. So we can move it a ways to the west, and the fire department is willing to do that. Moving it completely out of the runway protection zone causes some hardships for the department in terms of grading and access issues. So I guess we'd like to, we know that we're going to hear from the North Omaha Airport Authority. We'll also hear from Mr. Townsend, but we would like to leave it just as it is, because that's what's approved by the FAA. And I think I'd just like to reserve how this finally ends up and what the resolution might be with some rebuttal, and we'll see how the discussion goes here for the rest of the meeting. So,
Mark, can you just point to the pavilion versus the fire station, and then,
the fire station is located to the north,
okay.
and the pavilion is located to the south, right here.
So the pavilion is inside the zone, the airport zone?
The proposed fire station is located completely outside of the RPZ. The pavilion is located just north of an existing farmhouse in a treed area that is an ideal location for that pavilion. That pavilion is a open air, not very tall. It's like you'd see a park shelter out at one of the NRD reservoirs. So that's the kind of facility that we're proposing here to be used 2 or 3 times of the year privately, only by the fire department for picnics, etc. So, Tom, do you want to say anything at this time, or?
I do have a question about the
Yes.
the FAA letter. I noticed it's titled Determination of No Hazard to Air Navigation, which is the same title of the letter that was received in 2011. In 2011, they did note that it would be in the RPZ and stated that they strongly discouraged people from structures which will result in a congregation of people within an RPZ. That is not addressed in this letter, even though it is still in the RPZ. Do you know if the FAA's position on that has changed, or why that was not addressed in this particular letter?
I don't know what their formal position is, but I have heard some understandings that the FAA is relaxing some of their requirements for activities within the RPZ zones and the extremities of RPZ zones.
But that's, as far as you know, just conjecture.
I do not have any documentation of that. But to your point, that clause or that condition is not contained in our report that we received just last month.
Thank you.
I have questions on kind of the whys here and how this is coming together. Are you going to keep the existing facility that you have in Irvington? You are.
Tom Townsend, address is 6381 Sorensen Lane, Omaha. Member of the fire station, also president of the HOA for our Smoky Ridge development. Yes, this is intended to be a satellite fire station to help further serve the area to our north and our west. And we're also anticipating more cooperation with the Fort Calhoun and Ponca Hills fire departments. As you may or may not know, volunteerism in this day and age is really tough, so getting younger people. So we think that by putting a satellite station, we can save people insurance money by having a response area that serves 3 departments closer to that northern area up there. So we do plan to keep the current fire station, and this will be a satellite with a couple of trucks.
Okay. And what is your timing on the construction of the fire station then in this location here? Then?
Yeah, we started out a few years ago when we originally plotted this, and we all got busy and the fundraising fell off a little bit. We're back in that with earnest, and we're in discussions with our rural board about the financing of this. Our current plan is, based on everything coming together, would be to start construction sometime this coming summer.
So that's a fairly short period of time here, so you must have some idea where the funds are going to come from at this point. Can you give us any indication? We had quite a conversation as to why the pavilion first and not the fire station.
Well, the pavilion, we originally didn't think that the fire station would be ready right soon, and we wanted to get something set up in the area for our recreational use, what we do from time to time. So we planned that and had that done, and then we found out that the conditional use had expired, so we had to do that. In this last 3 months that we've done that, in discussions with our board, we're looking at private financing, we're looking at donations, and we're looking at a bond issue as well for our district.
And how far along are you?
Our board is in discussions with legal on what the process is for the bonds. We've had discussion with the people that do that kind of work, and the thought, it's a very short process. Once we pull the trigger, we think that that'll happen again in this first couple of months of this year. At that point, we'll get final plans and plot plans and things drawn up to submit to the city for building permits and so on.
Yeah, I'm of the belief that I think it's more important that you construct the fire station before you put the pavilion up. I don't know what the rest of the board thinks about that, but would you have any objection if we made a condition on this that you would construct the fire station prior to the pavilion being erected?
I guess our question is to why there are two separate structures and two separate areas of the property. I guess the question is why would you want to condition that?
Because I would worry that the fire station would never be built.
Well, we still own that whole development,
I
that
understand.
whole property, so we would still, even if the fire station wasn't built for some reason or it got delayed, that is still a structure that we would utilize.
The pavilion,
Yes.
right? But the primary use would be the fire station.
The primary goal is the fire station plus the whole development. We have 13 1 to 2 acre lots in there that
Right.
we're hoping that firemen will build on and we'll be able to serve that area with. Yes.
Right.
So it's for their use as well.
Okay.
What are the qualities of the pavilion besides families and recreation and stuff? Are you doing is it for training? Is it for exercise? Is it for?
No, that's one thing that was a little misleading in the letter from the city staff. It is strictly for the private use of the fire department. We have an annual picnic and, a couple of cookouts a year, and that's really about it. So we wanted to get that structure up there. We hope that would also help by showing a little bit of activity in the area for fundraising, plus an amenity for families who may want to build a house in there with us.
That, your earlier comment that the fire station is going to remain where it is, and this would be a satellite station, raises concern with me. I raised the issue in the pre-meeting that I would, and Mr. Pate agreed with me, that we'd like to see the fire station up before the pavilion. This whole issue came up 7 years ago as a fire station issue, okay? It's now regressed, in my mind, to a recreational issue, where you guys want to put up a pavilion out there, and the fire station becomes secondary, might even be tertiary at this point. But my concern is that we do it the way it was presented to us 5, 6, 7 years ago, and that was the construction of a fire station first. And I'm having a lot of issues with putting up a pavilion, and as you just stated a minute ago, just for the private use of the fire department employees and members. It becomes a recreational facility right next to the airport. I am also concerned that in the letter that was received from the FAA, no mention of the RPZ and the proximity of the facilities in the RPZ came up. I don't know how the request for the letter to the FAA went out, but I'm concerned about how the answer came back, that there was no mention of it. Whether there was a relaxing of some of the criteria or regulations or what have you, that might be in effect at that time when the first letter was written, also concerns me that I see no traceability there.
You want me to respond to any?
Just a second here. What Arnold has said, I agree with, and I think you and I were both on the board at the time when this first came up. And I'd like to see the fire station first also, but let's back up a little bit. Are you requesting that the planning department has made a request, a recommendation that pavilion be moved 75 feet to the west? You're asking for that pavilion to stay right where it's at on your site plan here? Is
Well,
that correct?
Again, as Mark mentioned, we just got that letter a day ago, from the city with that recommendation. And we talked about it briefly. I mean, everything, to address the FAA real quickly, and you can get this off the FAA website. If an airport does not own or control the land that an RPZ is in, they have no governance over that. They have nothing that they can claim other than a safety issue,
Well,
a safety concern.
That's a big issue.
Well, it is, but again, not to digress, but looking at the Millard Airport, there are soccer fields in the RPZ of the Millard Airport. There will be more people at one soccer game on a Saturday on the Millard RPZ than there will ever be at our pavilion up there. There's hundreds every day during the summer at Millard Airport, and I believe that's a city-owned deal. The fire station, we would be open to get the topographical of the farmstead that sits there, where the old farmhouse is and such, sets about 8 to 10 feet higher than where the fire station property is.
We were out there, we saw that.
If 75 feet to the west keeps it on top of the hill, we wouldn't have a problem with that. If 75 feet moves it down the hill, and then the city requires a parking lot and driveway from Stargrass Road prior to construction of the fire station, that would be just cost prohibitive and really not practical, so.
Well, it's my understanding if you would go ahead, if we did okay the pavilion, that yes, parking lot is going to have to be built and bathroom facilities are going to have to be built.
Yeah, parking lot could be handled. We have access to that upper tier through Northern Hills Drive. There's a driveway to the existing farmhouse. There is more than adequate room for any sort of parking that the city would require up there for that. So that was why we wanted to keep it on the upper tier as opposed to moving it. We don't know what the city's recommendation for the 75 feet was. If the 75 feet to the west keeps it on the upper tier, that's something we could deal with.
The city's recommendation is to make sure that that pavilion gets outside of the RPZ.
And that 75 feet and staying on the upper, I don't think that would happen.
Okay. Just a comment, and maybe I shouldn't make this comment, but I'm going to make it anyways. If I'm a resident in the Irvington Fire District, and I'm at the far end of the district, I would want to see a firehouse built closer. Response time is going to be a lot. When as a resident, if I'm told that we don't have the money, but we do have money to spend on a pavilion, I know it's not an elaborate pavilion, but a pavilion and a parking lot and bathrooms, I'm going to say, let's spend that money on the firehouse so we can get that thing built.
Yeah, and our position is that they're going to happen on or about the same time. The pavilion could actually sits on a flat foundation, could go up while construction's going on with the fire department. But
Mike Pate made that request of you or somebody, but I thought I also heard, well, it may not be built. Is that correct? Did I hear that correctly?
Our plans are full speed ahead. We have our board that we're working with on a bond issue. We have a couple of foundations that we're talking to, and we also have private financing available to us. Our preference is to potentially go bond issue first, and we'll go from there. And that is what's being worked on at this time. Our timeline is to plan to go out for bid this early spring, with construction being able to get started in the summer. So, and could I make one more comment? I understand the RPZ and the safety issue, but when the North Omaha Airport extended their runway starting in 2002, they brought in our farmhouse now on the north and another farmhouse on the south that have both been occupied full-time, ours not for the last 6 months, were brought into that RPZ without notification or permission of the people who lived in those houses. So the safety concern, I mean, those things have always been there. This pavilion will be occupied way less time than the people who lived in those homes and who live in there today. So while we understand the safety concern, we feel that we were sort of encroached on in 2004, 2002 to 2004, when that was increased with no ability to rebut that.
But it is now the RPZ. And put yourself in our seats, asking us to approve a pavilion that sits in an RPZ. If we make that approval with that pavilion in the RPZ, there's a function there, and God forbid something happens with an airplane. We've made the approval of that, knowing that that's in the RPZ.
I understand, and not to be, argumentative, but is the same thing exist at Millard and currently exist in the home today? That if somebody crashes into the home to the south, we're still in that same boat.
None of us were, well, go ahead, I'm sorry.
When did you
Chris.
purchase the property?
In, was it 2000? 2007,
So the
I believe.
RPZ already existed there before you purchased the property?
That I don't know. He was in the process of extending in the 2004 timeframe, but we got approval for a single-family house in there. And again, the FAA website will say that if the airport does not control the land, they can't govern or insist on things that go on the property that's adjacent in an RPZ.
You mentioned that you're looking for more people to buy houses. Who owns the development land? And what entity owns the development land? What entity owns where the pavilion and firehouse would be?
The Irvington Volunteer Fire Department owns the land, the development lots, and it was set up as a specialized HOA set aside for firemen who belong to the department and offer service to buy property in there.
And how many potential building sites do you have left for houses?
12. In any case, if we have, because of the progress that we're in with the fire station, our funding, if we would hope you wouldn't, but if you decided to do something different with the pavilion, we would request that we approve the fire station, which is completely outside, and let us continue down that road. But we would also hope that, based on the information that we're able to give you and the actual hardships that moving that way down out of the RPZ would cause, we would hope that you would consider both.
As one of our options, could we approve the fire station outside the zone and lay over the pavilion?
Well, they being presented as separate.
I mean, we have one case before us. We have a site plan that shows the fire station, the parking lot, and the pavilion. You can't just separate out in that manner to lay over the pavilion. That I think you would either have to lay over the entire case or make modifications, changes to the conditions, things like that.
Okay.
Okay. Let's hear from the, are there any other proponents? Are there any opponents?
Members of Planning Board, my name is Keith Edquist, 9747 Nottingham Drive here in Omaha. I'm the owner of the North Omaha Airport. I've been the owner there for about 22 years, been flying there for more than 25 or 26 years. Just to bring up a couple of things. First of all, I don't like being a villain to the volunteer fire department. They serve a very important use, amenity to the neighborhood. And I recognize their passion for wanting to put their fire station there. And certainly I'd like to see it there, and I think that you would too. But there's a safety issue that they are not recognizing is imminent as a problem. And I some of this, and I'll want to show this here in a second, but there's a joint probability, this is not my words, these are from aviation people, that you have at the end of a runway like this. It's not only the airplane that will go in at some point in time, and it's not if, it's when an airplane will go in to that RPZ. I'm not saying it's the most dangerous, but it is certainly the most obvious where all accidents, or a lot of the accidents, happen when it comes to aviation landing and taking off. The concern that I have is that most people don't really recognize the danger at an airport until they hear a fatality. I've had the airport for 20-some years, and in 25 years, there's been 2 fatalities within an RPZ at the North Omaha Airport. If you really look back at a couple of things, and I need to say this here. It was said that Millard RPZ is in the recreation area. I do not believe that that is true. And I would like someone to check that out, but I just do not believe that that's true. When they came in here to do some rezoning, if you notice, they put the storage units off to the side and not let the storage units where there's really no people in the RPZ. And that happened here in the last 10 years. By the way, I purchased all the land around the North Omaha Airport similarly to what the city would do if they were trying to buy up their easements. On this particular land, the land, first of all, to the south, I purchased land to the south to provide more safety for the airport. Years ago, and it's been more than 10, maybe 12 or 13 or 14 years ago, I purchased the 30 acres that's just directly east, or I'm sorry, north of the North Omaha Airport. And we extended my runway. And the 2 council or board members that were here at that time, I came in here only for a safety reason, only for safety. When I did that and came in and talked about safety, the neighbors had no concern about the airport other than the fact, would I start bringing in jets in there, and what kind of aircraft would I bring in? What I did is I limited the type of aircraft that can even come into North Omaha Airport, which is 8,000 pounds. And I have never allowed a jet to come in there, even though there's a couple of jet-powered prop airplanes that have come in from time to time that are not a problem. But when I extended the runway, it was going to extend the RPZ. By the way, I tried to buy this property, and I've offered to buy the property from the fire department. But they want this land, and this is the land they want for the endeavors that they are working on. Now, I want to go back to this RPZ a second, and I want to use this drawing, if I may. Yes. Okay. Again, this shows the end of the runway at this point. And actually, the runway comes to here. And I'm going to show another drawing here in just a second. Anyway, this RPZ that's here, and I understand what the city is saying. Well, why not move this pavilion that's here just over into here? I don't think that that diminishes the joint probability of an accident. As I said before, it is imminent that an airplane will end up in here. There's been at least a dozen at this end or at the other end over that period of time. There's been 2 fatalities in that 25 years. Those are just days. If you look at it in days, that's 8,000 days. So it's something that's going to happen. The joint probability is now you add people. It's not this plane going down, is at the time that there's people there. That brings up the danger. So I say that that is a concern of mine. This pavilion is larger than most houses. I think would you tell me, is it 2,000, 3,000, or 4,000 feet? You know, you've got it, so what is it?
30 by 60.
30 by 60, 2,000 square feet. So my concern has always been training, which they want to have training there, and that's what volunteer fire departments do. Local fire departments in the city don't do that. Fundraising. They show here on this about 50-some parking stalls. On another plan that I have, they show 70 parking stalls. Now, to me, my concern is, I want you to approve the volunteer fire department's building for a fire station. I think that we ought to move ahead with that. And I don't have a real problem with that. I have a problem with gatherings, just like the FAA raised a question several years ago. And that is a major concern that I have. I guess I could wash my hands of it and say, walk away, it's not a big deal. I'm telling you, I know what happens when there is an accident in there. And like I said, you won't hear about it unless there's a fatality. Now, I want to go back to this. Let me turn the tables on this just a second, if I may. Let's just say the volunteer fire department already was there, and it already had a training area, and it had the pavilion, and it had a picnic area for fundraising and picnics and that for their families. And let's say that these houses were around it. And let's say that the North Omaha Airport, a guy that owns 38 acres here, came in and said, you know, I'd like to build an airport here. My guess is safety would become the first thing that would be on your mind. Is this a safe place to put this airport? Now, I'm going to go back to where the fire department is. And some of the questions that were raised are very interesting questions about, because I pay money to the fire service. And I want to make sure that we get a good fire service that has good times that they're able to get the firemen to their station. They're now going to have a fire station that's going to be, unless they fill these houses up or this land with homes, the firemen are going to be quite a ways away from a call that's going to be made there. Now, are they going to go to Fort Calhoun, or are they going to go to Ponca to make some of the calls, which they make calls now in this very same area? It's called Tri-Mutual Aid. Now, here's where they want to put their station. I have no problem with it. I would ask for you to move ahead and approve their application for a special use permit for the fire station. But they could easily move all of this over to here and do exactly the same thing. They could have their training, they could have their public events, and they could have their station all over in this ground. They got 20-some acres that they could use for that. Now, my only concern with whether or not that's been thought about, I want you to know I've reached out to the volunteer fire department a lot. I hold here, I have a building at the North Omaha Airport that was built less than 20 years ago. I had an architect, if you're interested in looking, it's the very same plans of theirs, and then it put an addition around it for probably half the cost and probably half the time. The volunteer fire department could have a station there right now. I've even reached out to the fire department and said, I'll give them land at the North Omaha Airport to build their station. They can have public events there. I'll close the airport for a public event for them. I've said I'll do anything for them when it comes to a picnic area or whatever. And I provide for one for them at the airport. It's where it ought to be. You go to any, not a major city, but most major cities, similar to Omaha, with an outlining area that's building up. If there's an airport, there's generally a fire station on it.
And Keith, what was our response when you asked that question of them?
I'll let them answer to that, because they said no. And if you looked at these plans, they're identical to their plans. It shows training facilities, it shows offices, and it shows a weight room. It shows all of those things. Now, again, there's a couple of other issues that are probably looming right now, and I am very concerned about all of those. And as to what we're going to do as far as aviation with the airport. So with that, I don't know that I'll answer any other
Keith,
questions.
I have a question for you. To your knowledge, has the FAA changed its position regarding the RPZ since the letter that was sent in 2011?
Do I know about that letter in 2011?
Well, the letter that was received by the fire department in 2011 that referenced the RPZ, they received a nearly identical letter now, which does not reference the RPZ, and they said that the
Yes,
FAA had
and
relaxed its position.
Part of that is that, first of all, the FAA they're bureaucrats, either in Kansas City or wherever they went to get their approval. The FAA does not regulate airports. They recommend what should be done. That letter that went back originally 6 years ago, I certainly got involved with because I was requesting, if the two members here would recall, my concern was still safety. My concern is having a training facility with smoke, with fire, whatever it is, does not mix with a landing aircraft. And a pilot is busier by far on a landing and a takeoff than he or she is flying an airplane across country. And so that I give you some ideas, coming into the North Omaha Airport, and I want to answer your question of the FAA. The FAA probably wasn't asked what was going on here, or they didn't. They did 5, 6 years ago because I raised the questions. Now, this particular time, I expected that much of what we were talking about and safety was probably a pretty easy issue to look at and say, is this a safe place to put this? And you've already raised that question. So as far as I'm concerned, you recognize there's a danger in an RPZ. And as far as the FAA, if you would have said that they're going to have training here and they're going to have that, I guarantee you they would say probably the exact same thing. And if they didn't, only your own common sense would say, wait a minute, the reason we've got the RPZ is to protect the end of the runway. And by the way, the owners of the property, on this property that they bought, that I would have liked to have bought, which happened to be the, I can't remember what their last name is, but in a minute I'll remember. But when they, when this zoning came, they got the same letters everybody else does, that there's a zoning going on that's by your property, and it may affect what it happens at your particular airfield, or from our airfield to them. That owner was there for many, many years and had helped us fish airplanes out of his field at that time. So I can only tell you that the FAA is not going to probably say anything more than what they said back then. And again, they only addressed height, which you would expect that that's what they would do. Now, going back here, an airplane that's coming in to land at the North Omaha Airport, because I'll give you just a little bit of knowledge of landing at North Omaha Airport. We are within the Eppley Airfield airspace. So our airplanes that are landing at the North Omaha Airport must be about 300 or 400 feet lower than they are at any other airport. So they start at about 600 feet above the ground when they make their first base turn, which is out here or out here. When they make a final into the North Omaha Airport, they are within 150 feet of the ground. I will tell you that if you were to stall an airplane at that altitude, you will be on the ground in 3 seconds. Period. Now, going back to this danger issue, it would be easy to amend this to simply tell them to go there. They will go there. They're not going to walk away from this development. It's no more if a developer came in here and said, I want to put a park here, and it was the wrong place. He's not going to walk away from his development. So, with that, I'll conclude.
Okay. Thanks, Keith. Are there any other opponents? Rebuttal?
Yeah, excuse me, Tom Townsend again. If I could just address one or two things.
Can we get your address, please?
6381 Sorensen Lane, Omaha. Thank you. From the smoke issue that Mr. Edquist brought up, we do very little smoke training. We participate with the Omaha Fire Training Center out on Rainwood Road, so anything major we do out there. We're in the county. County has burn permits. There are burn permits and people burning wood piles and bonfires all over this area up there. In fact, there has been burn permits issued to Mr. Edquist on airport property that he's burned, and I don't know that he shut down the airport. So that's a fairly minor concern. In fact, the Omaha Police Department burned their ammo, their spare ammo, a couple of months ago right next to the runway. So there's not a lot of that goes on, so that's not should not be a major concern because we're not going to create large fires with this thing. The only thing I would say in closing, if you're, while we don't quite understand the interest in trying to make us develop the fire station before a pavilion, and we're private, it's private land and everything else, we certainly don't want to delay the fire station approval, and we would once again say if we could get that approval to go forward without having to lay things over another 60 days, that would be beneficial while we try to understand what else we could do with the pavilion. The other land that he referenced down on the bottom there, that would not be appropriate for the fire station property from the land layout. And the layout of the land is it slopes up in our ability to do the work that we want to do there. So,
Can you address the question that I asked Mr. Edquist about the offer that he had made to you with regards to using his facilities for
Yeah.
some of the activities?
yeah, we did not ask him to draw an architectural plan or do whatever. He's got a 20-year-old building that we're not even sure it would be appropriate for housing our equipment. We don't know what the ground underneath it is, if there's hazardous materials. We don't know if there's the concrete that will support it and all those kinds of things. We own the property, Smoky Ridge Development, which includes the fire station land, free and clear. We've spent $500,000 developing that into that. And to just abandon it and swap it, he did not want to give us the land. He wanted to swap it for the land that the fire station sits on. That's been his proposal all along. And that, we believe, with the infrastructure we've already put in, is not anywhere near a fair swap. Plus the right-of-way and the in and out and the length that we need for large trucks and things, especially if we were to go to the back of a fire station, is not appropriate. We would be right on top of a runway or a taxiway with so we determined it's not viable.
Thank you.
Thank you.
May I make a comment on the wording?
That one up, Dave.
Thanks, Ren.
Again, my name is Keith Edquist at 9747 Nottingham. First of all, in the burning. Yes, the city of Omaha's bomb crew has come out on a couple of occasions to explode apparatus or items that they have taken that they want to explode. A fire at 150 feet and smoke at an end of a runway goes back to joint probability. The chances are of a pilot coming into contact with a fire or smoke flying along. When it comes to an airport, you don't expect to have fire at an end of the runway or smoke. Now that is my main concern, is any kind of training that is done at that site. But certainly the people do not expect to have the danger because they just don't expect it. But I will tell you that it's real. When it comes to the fire issue, 150 feet is what it is. First of all, if they got the impression that I would trade them, I've said I would trade them. I would trade them developing land with streets, water, gas, and everything else. It's identical. It's called Northern Hills Estates. I would trade lot for them so that no one would build there. But at the same time, if they think that I would not give them the land, I will say in front of you, I will give them land free for their fire station at the airport, free.
Okay, I'll beat this horse to death. Any other comments? Public hearing on this item is closed. Let's hear from the city.
Yes, so the city did receive, as was mentioned, the 2 letters from the FAA, indicating, approval of the structures to be built. And as has been discussed, it did, the letter from 2010 was slightly different in its reference to the RPZ. the city reached out to the FAA. I don't know if it was due to holidays or the person we tried to contact, but unfortunately, we were not able to get any clarification on why the letters sent this time did not include that. So we did reach out, but unfortunately, we couldn't get an answer from them. That being said, you know, the FAA does recommend adjacent airports to try to control the land surrounding them, including the RPZ. Obviously, this is not under ownership of the airport, but it is the RPZ's function to enhance the protection of people and property on the ground. So those are our reasonings to move the pavilion approximately 75 feet to the west to get it outside that RPZ. With that being said, the city is recommending approval of the conditional use permit to allow safety services in a DR-ED district, subject to the 8 conditions listed in the recommendation report.
Okay, I am going to make a motion to approve the conditional use permit to allow safety services in a DR-ED district, subject to 6 of the conditions, those being number 1, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, and eliminate conditions number 2 and 3, and add one more condition which would state that the fire station must be constructed prior to construction of the pavilion. And move the pavilion 75 feet to the west.
Which is condition number 1, so
Okay.
that's already included.
Thank you.
Have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Can we have a roll call for the vote, please?
Moore? Yes.
Pate,
Yes.
Carnes,
No.
Rosenbaum,
No.
Megan,
Yes.
Rosacker,
No.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
approved with conditions stated.
Okay, our next item is number 4. C3-18-006 Carnation Ballroom LLC. We have the applicants, please.
Hello, I'm Christine Gerber with Restoration Exchange Omaha, and I brought as my guest the owner of the building, Ben Swan. So we've had our eye on this building for about a year now. We have been seeing the development that's been going on at 24th and Lake Street, and we saw this building that's really had no commercial activity for about 30 years now. We saw it as a really important catalyst to try to bring attention to it, and also be a catalyst to continue development north of 24th Street. So in February of 2017, we heart bombed it, which means we made all these hearts, love me, save me, red bricks rock, and we plastered it with hearts. And one of those people that was part of our heart bombing that volunteered to come was Ben Swan. And Ben Swan saw that. He's a small developer, and he said, you know what, I do think this building needs to be saved. And so he bought it. And so we knew of the Carnation Ballrooms. We knew a little bit about the history of it, but we actually worked with Ben. And you know, when we talked to Ben, he's like, I want to make sure this building stays standing. And I want to make sure that we can tell its story. And so we dug into its story. And you know, to get locally landmarked, to get on the National Register, you have to qualify under one of 4 criteria. One, which a lot of you know of, is the architecture. So it's, you know, it's a significant style, a significant architect. But there are 3 other reasons. One is archaeology, which well, who knows what's underneath, but that is not what we were looking at. But we also looked at its significance of place or its significant tie to a person. So as we were digging into this building, what we learned was This building is so important to not only Omaha's story, but America's story. This building in the 1950s was really the center hub of the near North Omaha side. It was a place where there were fashion shows, there were dances, but more important, it served as a place in this Chitlin circuit. And what the Chitlin circuit was black performers at the time had very few places that they could perform in. And this was one of those places that they could go to. And so because of that, you had performers like B.B. King and Dizzy Gillespie that performed in this place. So for that reason, we want to get this locally landmarked and provide a stability for it. We've already, because of the attention that we've brought to it and because we've already started sharing its story, Ben can talk more to this, Ben's already had several offers of people that want to buy this building and restore it and turn it into a building that's going to bring a lot more vitality to North Omaha. So that's why I'd like to request that you approve this. And Ben's here to answer any questions you have to.
Before Ben comes up,
What?
before Ben comes up,
Okay.
I raised a question in the pre-meeting about the building. Are we asking for landmark designation of the building because of who owned it, who might have performed there, rather than the architect? Because I see no architectural value to it. I'll tell you that right now. I've been by there. I don't see it, okay? I don't even see some of the relevance that you suggested there being accurate. I just don't see it. I mean, if you've been here before, you know I've raised a lot of issues about landmark designation to buildings and the reasons behind it, what have you. And this one just doesn't cut it for me, okay? So someone's going to have to be very concise, very direct, and prove to me that this building, this particular building, I don't see the site, I don't see it up here, but that's boarded up, needs a lot of work done to it, needs a landmark designation, and the value of that landmark designation to the community.
Well, Arnold, so here's, through National Register nominations and local landmark nominations, we tell America's story. And so many times in the past, what are the stories we've told? We've told the stories of those mansions, and we've told the stories of those architecturally significant buildings. Who owned those mansions? Who owned those architecturally significant buildings? White males. And so have we really done a good job of telling America's story if we're not locally landmarking and putting on the National Register these buildings that tell Omaha's African American story? And this building definitely does that.
Okay. Let me hear the story.
Well, so the story is, as we talked about, is that it was a social hub. It was a hub for near North Omaha where they had fashion shows, which was very important in the African American community. It was a safe place that they could go to dance. It was a place where they could hear African American performers perform, and a place where African American performers could perform. And there were so few of those in America. It was a social hub for them. And so that span was from 1948 until 1959.
Okay, I'm about to get on the wrong side of some people here, but I'm going to say it. And that is, I don't see any African American people behind you suggesting that what you said is what they need.
Well, I didn't invite them to come, but we have talked very much with Ben Gray. We've talked to Willie Barney, who's actually one of the people interested in buying the building. We've talked to Terry Sanders with the Omaha Economics. So they're all very aware of what we're doing and very supportive and very thankful. And actually, we were able to do this grant at no cost, or do this nomination at no cost, thanks to a North Omaha Turnback Tax Grant, which was approved by Ben Gray and Chris Rogers and Brenda Council.
Christina, could Ron come up and tell us a little bit about how he's decided to be involved in that?
Yep.
Thanks.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Ben Swan, 2220 North 58th Street here in Omaha. That's a legitimate question. I'm white. Everybody here is white. Why are we looking to preserve a building that's part of African American history in Omaha? If you look in the 50s, there wasn't a building that was a more important cultural center for North Omaha, period. Maybe the Dreamland Ballroom in the 40s, but everybody played here. B.B. King, James Brown, multiple times. It's a significant building culturally. I'm a member of the North 24th Street Corridor Group, and everyone in that has family members or people who have parents or grandparents or aunts or uncles who attended events there. It was a magnet and an important part. So to get a building nominated as a landmark, you can do it based on architectural significance, which the building does not have, or cultural significance, which in my mind, there's absolutely no doubt that it does have. We've marketed the property to first provide landmark status and to work to get it on the National Register so that if money was put into it, because it is a big task. The building has been neglected for a number of years. There's a number of issues that without some federal and state tax credit assistance would make it's going to be a labor of love no matter what. And it would make it economically, no return labor of love without those credits. So positioning the building, I had a phase 1 environmental survey done. I had an ALTA survey done. I've worked with the neighborhood organizations to find an owner of the building that has a connection to that neighborhood. We had multiple offers. We rejected some from developers that were known for tearing buildings down. We rejected some for people that had inadequate capital to restore the building. I wanted to do this because I have a connection to this building, and I wanted to return it to the community in an authentic way. The person that's currently looking at buying this has a connection to the community, has the capital to renovate the building with landmark status. It's not going to get torn down. There's a lot of grass lots, overgrown grass lots along 24th Street, which is a vital corridor. We do not need another one. This positions it, it makes it less marketable because it takes away people that could potentially tear it down, but it also makes it a lot more marketable because, for example, from Christine's efforts now, if you just go over the area of North Omaha on Google, it comes up as a local landmark. So it does highlight, in an area where community pride is needed, it enhances community pride, and I think North Omaha is one of the things that is underappreciated treasure here in Omaha, and we don't have an integrated culture that we're able to export. We have a history of segregation, and we have a history that just tearing this building down would further ignore when it is a treasure. And there are thousands and thousands of residents today who have emotional connections to that building. I have some in my extended family. That's how I found out about this building. And there's just, in my mind, no doubt that it's culturally significant. And so I appreciate your questions, but I do have an answer to it, and that's what it is.
You own the property already?
Yes, I've owned the property for a year.
Okay. You mentioned a lot of investigations you did before you bought it or since you've done it. How about a structural report?
Yep, I've had DICON, I've had TD2 out there. Both of them feel as though there are no structural issues to the steel beams, which are significant steel beams, that there are no issues to the footings of the building. There are some walls that have masonry deterioration. Water's penetrated in between the multiple layers of brick. It's like 12 and 18-inch courses of brick. Those will have to be pulled apart and tuck pointed and put back together, but structurally overall the building is good. Part of any of the qualified buyers that we were looking at asked to see this due diligence material because they were putting it together renovation or restoration cost estimates and budgets, which I had to do both for myself in case I was the one that was going to be renovating it, or if somebody else was going to be renovating it, showing them that it's viable. So yeah, it's sound. It's
So
structurally
you
sound.
bought it to flip it, basically?
No, I bought it.
The reason why I asked, I want
To
you,
yep.
whether you flip it or you develop it yourself, I want you to make a ton of money on it, so you'll go do this 10 more times in North Omaha, South Omaha, throughout the city. And I know development well enough, and I can look at a building and know that this isn't a cheap endeavor. One is, tell us what happens, one, if you get the designation as far as how much easier it'll be for you to get financing or get tax credits and historic tax credits, and then if you don't get it designated, what the plan would be. Does that make sense?
If it gets nominated, it raises the notoriety and awareness of the building. And there are people who would consider this a trophy property. And marketing this to them and making them aware of that was part of our process. And that was part of eliciting the multiple offers that we did get for it. The budget that we got was $789,000 to restore the building, which is less than new construction, as my real estate agent pointed out multiple times to people. And so your question, if it doesn't get that status, then then I'm tasked with a more difficult task of a building that's not recognized, that is on the path to being forgotten, as it was when I saw what I thought I saw in that building. And I think what I did is do due diligence to show that it can be renovated, and to be able to show that story to other people in a comprehensive, concise picture of here's budgets, here's actual due diligence and investigation of what the lots are, what are the conditions in the property. And without that landmark status, it just is a building that can fade into the past as generations move on, and I don't think that it deserves to do that.
So you go after historic tax credits and then TIF and whatever else?
Correct. Ideally, it's positioning the building to be a strong candidate for TIF versus just, any building in a blighted area can be put for TIF, and positioning this as like, yes, it's a strong candidate for TIF. It's been vetted to some degree. It's a candidate to get on the register. This is something that could be done.
But you realize that you once this gets on there, and do it to protect yourself either way, but you won't be able to tear the building down.
Sure, exactly. Okay. Yeah, for my amount of investment in this, for what I'm doing for the community, that's a risk I'm willing to take. Because I don't want the building to be torn down. That was my whole purpose in being inspired when I went to the heart bombing.
But a labor of love is a lot more expensive than, charity always hurts. So certainly there's a lot of good things about charity too, but it can hurt. And I don't want you to go there every day and work on this project and try to bail yourself out and have a bad taste in your mouth because it didn't go the way you thought it was going to go.
It's not my first old building.
So I mean, to me, when we heard about it, we've talked about this at great length, and we wouldn't buy it. I just don't want to see. If you're going to do it, I want to see it happen. Whether you do it or you find someone that's a good caretaker and well capitalized, that's a wonderful thing as far as I'm concerned. But I just don't want what is intended to be a good thing to get all this stuff passed, and then you look at it and say, well, gee, it would have been a lot nicer if we had the flexibility of changing the building. And we still have that cultural designation, that landmark, that location right there. Nobody's going to go and look at that building and say, boy, they really ruined it by putting that nice marquee on the corner. So there you have it.
What's the difference? Someone, whoever back there, can tell me the difference between, or the significance between a landmark designation and maybe an historical site designation.
That'd be a question for Christine.
Okay, because
Well, I'm not familiar. Well, I mean, to be locally landmarked, as you know, has stronger protection, so you cannot tear it down. And then if any restoration, if there's a permit that's being taken out on it for exterior work, that it has to meet Secretary of Interior design standards. National Register nomination gives it, it's more, I like to say, it gives it access to federal funds, But it's more of just more a marketing piece, and you can tear down a National Register building. So, I mean, it offers no, National Register, being nationally registered offers you no protection. And also on a National Register building, you can do whatever you want to it as long as you're not using federal funds.
Is there, I guess let's get back to my question, is there a difference between a landmark designation and a site designation as a historical site?
I'm not familiar with the site designation. Trina?
Well, I'm
You know where I'm
Westman.
coming from, Trina?
Yeah, well,
Okay.
we do have one.
Okay.
I'm Trina Westman, I'm the administrator for the Landmarks Commission. In Omaha, we have about 110 local landmark designations. One of them, or two of them are site designations. One is the Malcolm X site. There remains no architectural remnants from his birth site. And the other is the exposition site from the 1897 World Exposition, where there are no remnants also from that. So, and then the others all have buildings or structures on them.
So what are we trying to, what we're trying to do here is make it known to the public that on this particular site,
No,
in this particular building,
yes.
jeez, that's a stretch. I mean, I'm looking at that building, and I don't see much. You said you saw a lot in it. I didn't see much when I went by there today. I really didn't. And I tell you, I don't think you can get 100 people to walk past that building today and have someone tell you what went on in there.
Oh,
You gonna
give me an
disagree?
afternoon and I'll bring you 200. I've got hundreds of people. If you go to North Omaha Days, and there's thousands of people that'll talk about what happened inside of that building.
Okay.
And that's
What-
conjecture, but I would place that wager happily.
What do you hope to see, what do you hope to see happen with that building then? I mean, we've talked about a lot of things, but what do you hope to see happen with that building? Because you want to bring activity back there, I would assume,
Absolutely.
right?
The Blue Lion.
You want
is
to
a-
pay for the debt somehow, right? So what do you hope to see?
It's owned free and clear. There's no debt.
Okay.
Yep, the building's owned free and clear. And just as an aside, I am the owner of two buildings that have been renovated that, one, I had to have 70% cash into it to get a very small ancillary loan because my banker thought it was a tear down. And now the building is renovated and in good standing and beautiful. And it's a supporting structure in an area with a lot of historic buildings. And so some people just see things that others don't. And old buildings are tough, and they do require a lot of time, and they do require a lot of seeing what was there that could come back and what could be there. Because in its current condition, it's deteriorated.
Yeah, so you own it free and clear now, but you're going to have to renovate and spend quite a bit of money to renovate it to standards
Correct.
that are probably acceptable, not
Correct.
only to you, but to the
Correct.
general
About
public as well.
$800,000.
How much?
$800,000.
800?
But I'm not, because I'm going to be gone, but I'm going to see you back here asking for tough money.
Sure,
Yeah, okay.
absolutely. The building, sir, go
Let
ahead.
them do it. Let them go,
Yeah.
let them do it.
I'm just curious, because I'd love to see the building renovated and bring it back to some sort of its glory days. I love those types of buildings.
It's under contract right now with a person who's got the cash to be able to, who's a no-cash contingency purchase, who's got the cash to, as part of the questions that we asked, and they wrote a letter when they were purchasing the building, attached with the contract, and they've got the cash to be able to renovate it. And so identifying those costs, specifically, what is roofing, what is masonry, what is electrical, what is HVAC,
But that's just one part of it.
sure,
Because anybody can renovate a building and bring it back to its standards, right?
sure.
But then what are you going to do to breed activity in that building? Because as you drive by it right now, you're looking at it and you say, why? Why
Sure.
there? Why would anybody want to come back here?
I'd like to make a motion,
I want to hear him answer the question.
after he answers the question, of course.
Answer the question.
We still have to hear from.
If you look at the Blue Lion building, putting lighting and cleaning up the brick and putting a glass storefront brought an enormous amount of pride to that neighborhood and that corner of 24th and Lake. This is a block up, and just cleaning it up and maintaining that brick structure with its cultural significance to residents and people who have traveled through Omaha would be a beautiful thing, and I just think it'd be absolutely horrible to have that be a site where something once was.
When we were out on our site tour and we took a look at it, Christine made a great point, and Ben seems to understand. Christine's worry was, if we give this landmark designation, does the owner understand everything that goes with it? Obviously you do.
Yes, fully.
Arnold brought up TIF. If you came to this board in a few months and asked for TIF and you were denied a TIF, where would you be with this building?
Historic tax credits would be another funding avenue that would be available through this as a step in getting National Registry nomination. And so this adds to the potential revenue streams that would be tied to this building, or incentive streams that would be tied to this building to help with rehabilitation.
Okay, if you developed it, you didn't sell it, you developed this, it's going to be around $800,000.
Correct.
You can do that without TIF.
It depends on the use. TIF has guidelines for use, guidelines for building size, the different uses. Like if it were mixed use versus purely commercial, that is something that to have occupancy as a place of business was the $800,000 bid. So whether, I know TIF is right now heavily looked at for mixed use for providing a housing component as well. And so right now TIF is not really a requirement to be part of this process. That's an independent thing. And whether or not the return would be there for a TIF eligible project is just not part of the purview of the landmark nomination. It's not that we haven't looked at it, and it's not like we wouldn't want to have that as an arrow in the quiver given the right proposed project. But it's to get the building to be attractive to the area, because right now it's a little bit of a blight.
No, yeah.
It looks, the building looks run down, but there's a lot of buildings that have looked run down that look beautiful after putting some work into tuck pointing and restoring glass curtain walls where they once were and adding exterior lighting. The city's already done a great job with the sidewalks and new street and bump out parking in front, and it would fit well with 24th and Lake and add to a sense of pride versus being another potentially overgrown grass lot in that area.
I guess I have just to make a comment and maybe more to the board that obviously being in the building business, I see a lot of sow's ears turned into silk purses. And it's pretty amazing what can happen with the building if you are purposeful and you have the creative vision. I guess as it relates to the landmark designation, if I read the standards and what this is trying to do, it seems to me that we've approved other projects that were far less significant in my mind. And so, of course, I like music and stuff like that. And so reading this was quite enlightening for me. And I didn't grow up in Omaha. I grew up in a little town. We had no music except what we made, and nobody came to play for us. But so to me, it's a significant thing, and I think that's what they're asking for. And it seems to me that the criteria for the designation have been met in my mind.
Okay. Any other proponents? Any opponents? We'll close the public hearing on this matter. Hear from the city.
The Carnation Ballroom meets the standards for designation of historical and cultural importance to be designated as a local landmark. You know, we're not here to be speculative on whether TIF can pass for the project or not. It's basically the local landmark status, and the department recommends approval.
I'll make a motion for the approval of the Carnation Ballroom as a local landmark designation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Can we have a roll call for the vote, please?
Yes.
Carn? Yes. Rosenbaum?
Yes.
Megan?
Yes.
Rosacker?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
No.
Approved.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good luck.
Next item is number 5, C3-18-005. Planning Department, on behalf of the City of Omaha, requests approval of the Scott Tent and Awning Company TIF Development Project Plan, location 1501 Howard Street.
Yes, good afternoon. Don Seaton, Omaha City Planning Department. And speaking of TIF, historic building rehabs and mixed-use projects, that does bring us to the Scott Tent and Awning Company building. It's located at the corner of 15th and Howard. It's blue right here, downtown. It is a 3-story brick historic structure built in 1893, and it's been vacant for a fairly extended period of time. This kind of gives you a little bit of better context for the location of the building. The proposal, well, the owners will develop the building with state and federal historic preservation tax credits in additional to the TIF support they're requesting. The project has 6,742 square feet of commercial space. It will be renovated in the first floor, and above that there will be 16 market rate apartment units. There will also be 16 parking stalls inside the building in the lower level, the basement. The owner is Howard Street Landmark, LLC, and Dicon Corp. Will be the general contractor. Total project cost is approximately $6.5 million. The TIF support that is being requested is $572,659. There'll be about $118,000 in public improvements with the project. Let me put up a rendering of it also. What they visualize the end result to be. The public improvements include sidewalk, curb, gutters, landscaping, and lighting along both Howard Street and 15th Street. The project meets the required criteria for the TIF program. It's an appropriate land use for this location and complies with the goals of the city master plan. We ask for your approval.
Thank you. Any other proponents? Any opponents? Hearing none, public hearing is closed on this matter. Hear from the city.
Department recommends approval.
I'll make a motion for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Can I get a roll call for the vote, please?
Horn. Yes. Rosenthal.
Yes.
Megan.
Yes.
Rosacker.
Yes.
Moore.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Mr. Chair.
Yes. Next item is number 6, C3-96-276. Planning Department, on behalf of the City of Omaha, requests approval of an amendment to the downtown northeast redevelopment plan to expand the planned area. Location and area generally bounded by Chicago Street on the north, 17th Street on the east, Douglas Street on the south, and 20th Street on the west. Can we hear from the applicant, please?
Cassie Papen, Mayor's Office, on behalf of the Planning Department. The amendment that's before you today covers the former Civic Auditorium site. As you know, previously last year, you saw the preliminary plat for the redevelopment of that site. Traditionally, an amendment for this plan would actually come forward with any other entitlements, most notably any TIF applications that would be going forward. However, we are bringing this forward now because of the financing mechanism being used to do the demolition, which is the redevelopment bonds, and we need to have this plan in place, and so we would ask for your approval.
Thank you. Anybody in opposition? Public hearing is closed. City?
Department recommends approval.
I have a motion and a second. Can we have a roll call for the vote, please?
Rosenthal.
Yes.
Megan.
Yes.
Rosacker.
Yes.
Moore.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Horn. Yes. Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Approved.
Next item is number 7, subdivisions. It is C10-18-003, C12-18-004. Justin Shanahan requests preliminary and final plat approval of the Regis replat 15 and minor plat inside the city limits, rezoning from DR to DR and R4. location south of Shadow Ridge Drive, east of 186th Street. Applicant, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Larry Jobin, 11440 West Center Road, appearing with the applicant, Justin Shanahan, right here. This was on your agenda today, on the consent agenda for approval. It turns out there was a neighbor to the west that expressed some concern, and also they were out of the country, I think, for the next couple of weeks, and they asked if we would voluntarily lay this matter over, which we did send a letter to Mike Carter. I understand he is out, and I don't know if he got forwarded to you. Oh, there he is, right there. I think I can see you here, as long as I've been here. In any event, we requested a voluntary layover, so until February planning board meeting. So with that, it got pulled off the consent agenda, which I think it was moved to the layover. So I guess we'll hear from the gentleman that pulled it off the consent agenda for layover. Thank you.
Any
And
other,
then respond to anything if we need to.
any other proponents? Opponents?
Larry Couldn't-Brink, 1809 South 186th Street. We're in favor of the layover. There was no intent to not have it laid over. Didn't understand that the consent, pulling it off, would take it out of the layover status. So I had no idea that there was a request for layover.
Meeting, so.
Excuse me?
You got to do the whole meeting.
Yeah, learned a lot about historic district in North Omaha. Thank you. So, any other questions?
That course is going to be a landmark designation.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Any other opponents? Close the public hearing on the matter. City?
So obviously, the city had a recommendation report in favor with some conditions, but, we would obviously be in support of the applicant's request for layover until February meeting.
Move for layover until February meeting.
We have a motion and a second. Can we have a roll call for the vote, please?
Megan?
Yes.
Northacker?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Reed?
Yes.
Barr?
Yes.
Rosenbaum?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Laid over.
Next item is number 8, C10-17-188, C12-17-189, 228 Skyline LLC, request revised preliminary plat and final plat approval of the preserve, formerly the Highlands Ranch, a subdivision outside the city limits with waivers to section 53-8, 2B, cul-de-sacs and cul-de-sacs length, section 53-8, 2G, street width, section 53-8, 3, block length, section 53-9, 3, curb and gutter, section 53-9, sidewalks, and section 53-10, street lights, along with rezoning from AG to DR. Portions of the property are located in a floodway overlay district. Location is southwest of 222nd and F Streets. We have the applicant, please.
Good afternoon, Mr. Nesbitt. Jim Bouger, 10250 Regency Circle. I have with me today Jeff Lake from Summit Development and Kyle Bull from E&A to answer questions on behalf of the developer and if there's any engineering questions. First of all, I'd like to say thank you, Mr. Nesbitt, for your service on the planning board. We're certainly going to miss your wisdom and your experience. Thank you.
Thank you.
I represent 228 Skyline, who's the developer of this subdivision. It's a 270-acre site, which will be developed with 67 single-family lots from 2 to 9 acres. The approximate lot price for each of the lots will be about $225,000 to $400,000. The home prices will, as developed, will probably be $1 million plus, so it's a very high-end exclusive subdivision. We have privately owned streets with gated entrances planned for the subdivision. We'll have MED water and separate septic systems for the development. Be happy to answer any other questions you might have. We had some discussion about this with it joins the farm subdivision. We've kept them informed as to what we're doing. as well as the Hamptons on the west. And I think our relationship with those developments is good, and be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other proponents? Any opponents? Saying none, public hearing is closed. Any questions? City?
Jim, just a second. Was this going to be a gated community?
It is. We will have gates at the two entrances, controlled access, yes.
Okay, and then there was a question of the farm to the north. Do they have access to this community?
The plan is that we will provide the individual residents with a code so that they can have access. There will be a few of the residents of the farm that may find driving through our streets a more convenient way to egress from their lots. So I don't know how many of them will take us up on the offer, but won't make that available to them.
Okay.
Thank you. City?
So there are multiple waiver requests of subdivision code, similar to last time when this was originally in for the preliminary plat. There is one waiver request that we are recommending denial, and just to touch on that briefly, with the support to reduce the street width from 25 feet to 22 feet, as well as to not provide sidewalks within the development, we cannot support a waiver to eliminate streetlights. Now, just to clarify, the applicant isn't necessarily asking for a complete elimination of streetlights. They are asking for some, basically to work with us on spacing distance between lights, as well as some output and types of lights. That being said, the subdivision code regarding streetlights is pretty vague and does not get into those specifics. So, we will recommend denial of that section, but also acknowledge that the applicant should work with our Public Works Department and OPPD on coming to an acceptable lighting plan.
Where are the 22 feet in sidewalks?
What's that?
Are you allowing the 22-foot streets and no sidewalks?
Yep. So I'm going to take this in two recommendations. I'm going to start with just the city recommends denial of the waiver of section 53.910 regarding streetlights, and would ask for you to vote on that, and then we can come back and group all of the other items together.
But we are still asking the applicant to work with the city and OPPD and everyone else on some resolution to that issue.
That's correct.
Mr. Nesbitt, if I may comment on that.
Yes.
We do have a meeting set up with Public Works next week to talk about two issues, one of which is street lighting.
So we have your commitment to do that?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Is the applicant, have you accepted all these recommendations by the planning department?
Yes, so I guess that's a little bit of a loaded question with respect to the streetlights. So, yes, we did come in with an initial request to waive the streetlight requirements, and as we said or did when we went through our preliminary plat process, we agreed to work with the city on what the street lighting situation would look like. I think we're going to go with non-standard lighting of some sort, so it won't be OPPD standard lights. We'll have some, maybe higher end or different types of lighting, less direct lighting. And like I said, we're going to try and hopefully come to an agreement next week with Public Works on what that's going to look like.
Just for my edification, there, we've in the last few months we've seen a lot of requests for street variances from the street lights exceptions. What's going on?
Well, it's the same development, I would say. I don't know if we've had any others.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Lake?
Maybe in the dark.
You stand up. Say your name.
Sure. Good afternoon, Jeff Lake, 21008 Cumberland Drive.
So, what's the purpose of the narrow streets and no sidewalks?
Sure.
Is this like some rich version of Fight Club or something?
Absolutely not. No, it's more taking on the rural character that you see in a lot of subdivisions like this in the Northern Hills area. The terrain is very similar to that. The amount of tree canopy, the amount of grade terrain and change, it's very similar to that. And we felt that was an appropriate look for this. As far as the street width, without having the curb and gutter, the actual traveled lanes is 11 feet, which is not too far off from what you'd have on a street just without the curb and gutters. that allows us to use more natural, treatments for stormwater rather than putting everything in a pipe and consolidating.
So is this like parts of Rockbrook where you've got the ravines on the sides of the streets and then you have a pipe underneath driveways?
There will be a little bit of that. A lot of it, the way this is right now, a lot of it's in CRP and a lot of it's in kind of natural terrain. And when you have a small street section relative to a large lot, allows you to not have the same density like in a Rockbrook where you have ditches and pipes through all the driveways. We may have a little bit of that, but it's more of a natural design than it is a kind of forced ditch design.
I guess my concern, it seems like people with 2 acres to 9 acres, or however big these lots are and everything, everybody has their dogs and their pets and everything. And, I've been in the neighborhood, I grew up in a neighborhood where there's a few streetlights and there's curbs and gutter, but there's no sidewalks. And it's hilly. And when people are walking their dogs and stuff like that, there's some near misses. And if we got no sidewalks, we got 22-foot streets, and you got pets and people jogging and running, how do you, other than people trying to drive slowly, how do you protect against,
Sure.
just make everybody wear orange vests or something?
No, we didn't plan on that, but having 67 total lots in a gated community, there's not going to be a lot of, not as many opportunities for pedestrian vehicle interfaces that you would in a typical subdivision. You couple that with the pure size of these lots, and the frontage of these lots at minimum is 250 feet, which is near the length of a football field. Our hunch is a majority of the people that are in that position, they're not going to be out with strollers on the roads. They're probably driving their kids elsewhere, would be our guess, again, an assumption. So we feel that this is a little different from some of those examples you might be alluding to where you do have that situation, normal urban densities without sidewalks and narrow streets, that we feel is more of a concern than what we have in front of you.
So the average frontage on these lots would be what, you think?
The minimum frontage is 250 feet.
Okay, that gives me some comfort, I guess.
Is the paving going to be concrete?
Yes, 7-inch concrete, city standards.
I guess it just seems to me like with the confluence of all three of these issues, with the width, the walks, and then the decreased lighting, it just, as Trent was saying, it just gets to be quite a lot. And so I'm hoping that you're in your negotiations regarding the lighting, that the pathway lighting, as opposed to more general lighting, is what you're going to be looking for.
Yeah,
In order to
I
be
think
able
that's
to make sure that
stance.
roadway is visible.
Absolutely. With the terrain change adding to that too, I think that the need to have lighting in those places is important. I think that's where the city has kind of put some resistance to that. Ours is a little bit of, we didn't want to have 150 feet every light like you see in a typical subdivision with Cobra heads. We want to look at something a little more, architectural in design, which sort of deviates. OPPD only has, I believe, 3 options for you to use, so it's sort of limited. And the other item we're looking at, since this is all private, it's never going to be, assumably never going to be annexed, at least in most of our lifetimes, by the city. This neighborhood would be paying for all the streetlight costs themselves. So we were looking also at utilizing LED lights versus the stuff that OPPD has out there for us. So that's kind of the reason why. That allows different sort of lighting luminaires and intensities and different spacings, assumably.
What do you have against trick-or-treaters?
Nothing, other than serving them, I guess.
It'd be like the least likely trick-or-treating place that people will get busted in the city.
Probably correct.
Jeff, I just wanted to say that Dave and I were on the city of Elkhorn when we approved the 22-foot wide streets for the sanctuary. I wouldn't do that again, but because it's private streets and the only people that are going to be affected by it are the people that knowingly buy lots in there, and they know that. Dave did make a great point, though, on the street lighting. I live out in an area with very little street lighting, no sidewalks, and when people walk, it's dangerous. For whatever, people will wear dark clothing and you walk at night, and you have no idea that they're there until you're on top of them. So you might want to keep that in mind, just a safety issue. But
Sure.
My only issue would be the 22-foot, but because it's a privately owned streets, and the only people affected is that neighborhood, I'm all right with that.
Thank you.
Okay. Back to the city?
So once again, with this recommendation, we're recommending denial of the waiver of section 53.910 regarding streetlights.
take
Would
that
ask
as a-
that you vote, and then we'd come back.
We take that as a separate vote. So can I have a motion?
I'll make a motion for the denial waiver of section 53.910 regarding the streetlights with the stipulation that the parties work together with OPPD and the city to find an acceptable alternative.
We have a motion and a second. Can we have a roll call for the vote, please?
Rosacker?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Hay?
Yes.
Vaughn? Yes. Rosenbaum?
Yes.
Haggett?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Regarding the other materials, I'm going to go through and read all these. If you are acceptable with voting for them as read, you could probably just state your motion as recommended in the recommendation report. City recommends approval of the rezoning from AG to DR, approval of the waiver of section 53.8.2B for cul-de-sac length to exceed 600 feet, approval of the waiver of section 53-82G for street width to 22 feet, approval of the waiver of section 53-83 to exceed maximum block length of 1,320 feet, approval of the waiver of section 53-93 to not install curb and gutter, approval of the waiver of section 53-99 for sidewalks, with the exception that sidewalks will be required along the 222nd Street frontage, approval of the revised preliminary plat subject to the 17 conditions listed in the recommendation report, and approval of the final plat subject to the conditions of the revised preliminary plat approval and submittal of an acceptable final subdivision agreement prior to forwarding the request to City Council.
Make a motion to approve what he said.
We have a motion and a second. Can we have a roll call for the vote, please?
Moore?
Yes.
Hay?
Yes.
Vaughn? Yes. Rosenbaum?
Yes.
Haggett?
Yes.
Rosacker?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved.
Okay. Last item of the day. Number 9, C10-10-100 Lockwood Development requests approval of a major amendment to the mixed-use district development agreement for Sterling Ridge, location 132nd and Pacific Streets.
We're here to the bitter end.
Yeah, I see a lot of movement toward the front here.
We have quite a group with us.
You have quite a
today.
group. Do you have a spokesman for the group?
Yeah, I'll start, and I'm going to turn it over to some really smart people here in a little bit. Jim Boucher, 10250 Regency Circle, here on behalf of the applicant Lockwood Development. This is a project that is in the Sterling Ridge subdivision, which I've been involved in since the beginning and getting to a lot of public hearings on over the years. What we're doing presently is a couple of things. It's an amendment to the mixed-use development agreement, a major amendment. We are reconfiguring some lots to accommodate a project which the Trammell Crow folks are going to talk about, and I will introduce here in a moment. But we'll also accommodate, hopefully, a hotel that will be built in the subdivision in the future and 2 future office buildings. For some perspective on where we're talking about, if I can zoom out here. So we have, right here would be 132nd Street, Pacific Street. As you come off of 132nd Street, south of Pacific, you'll encounter, first of all, the Tri-Faith area. And the Tri-Faith area was an important part of this development, and John Walbaum is here today to talk about a little bit what the status of the Tri-Faith area is, and hopefully will be in support of our project. But there's been a mosque constructed, the temple has been constructed, and the Countryside Community Church is under construction. And as I understand it, that the Tri-Faith Center portion of that will be hopefully under construction sometime in 2018, as well as some significant other beautification improvements within that area. So the Trammell Crow project, which is a age-restricted, active adult senior housing project, is going to be constructed really just across the street from where the temple is, overlooking the Tri-Faith area. The hotel portion of the future development is situated right here next to the apartment project, and then the two future office buildings are to the north of where this age-restricted housing will go. So as I said, there's two purposes to the amendment to the mixed use. One, to reflect the reconfiguration of the lots, these 4 lots. Secondly, when we initially developed the subdivision, there was what we called the tri-faith restriction placed on 3 of the lots within the subdivision. Some complicated master plan issues were involved in approving the project. We exceeded the number of permitted acres for the mixed use within the subdivision by about 6 acres. And the project was approved on the condition that this tri-faith area was a special area, was a significant benefit to the city of Omaha, and it was conditioned that we would have that tri-faith area constructed prior to the eligibility of these 3 lots for commercial development. And because of the status of the tri-faith project, we are now asking that condition be eliminated, and we've had discussions with the city on that, and that's part of the amendment. So there's 2 facets to that. I'm going to have asked the Trammell Crow group to make a little presentation about their project so you can see what a great project. They're from Chicago, a large developer. I think it's a unique project to the city of Omaha. Happy to have them part of the Sterling Ridge subdivision. And so Johnny and Mary are here from Trammell Crow. They have their architects as well with us. So, thank you.
Good evening. Good afternoon. I guess what time it is. It's 3, 4 o'clock. And we're usually in the evening hours in Chicago. So thank you for your time. Again, Johnny Carlson with Trammell Crow Company. Based in Chicago, we cover the entire Midwest. And we're really excited to be in front of you here in Omaha. It's our first entrance, hopefully, to the city. We've been eyeing it. We think you're doing great things here and hopefully going to be part of everything you got going on here. So, like I said, Chicago, 700 Commerce Drive, Oak Brook, Illinois is our office. Sterling Ridge, we've mentioned it's an active adult community that we're proposing, 163 units. We have been building market rate housing options, about 150 units to 200 units throughout the Midwest, really geared towards millennials all the way up to empty nesters. And we've had great success working with ESG, who's also here this evening, with really looking at community. No project looks the same. We start with the local community, speak with stakeholders, reach out to the neighbors. We had a community meeting last night and took some feedback on what the design is, what the use is, and really try to look at every project solely, not just a cookie cutter developer. So we take pride in what we do. We've been very active. We're the most active developer in the United States. For the past 3 years, we've been the most active multifamily developer. There's a lot of statistics here. I won't bore you with them, but we just wanted to show you our breadth of expertise and really looking forward to utilizing this market and kind of growing our brand here. The site is just on the south side. It's labeled at 4.8 acres. As we mentioned previously, this is a 4-story building, 163 units of age-restricted apartments, which is a little bit different than the projects we've been doing recently, and Mary's going to walk you through the use with that.
Thanks, Julie. Mary Lucas, 700 Commerce, Oak Brook, Illinois. So the proposed project, active adult that they're saying, is a luxury rental for seniors. High amenity rich, high socialization, but it's really kind of the stepping stone before somebody would go into an independent living or assisted or memory care facility. So, a lot of it is driven by us and picking sites, like Johnny said, based on demographics, income. This is a way for seniors to unlock their home equity, but they don't necessarily require the care yet, but they really want the socialization piece that is involved in this type of community. So just to show you kind of where it fits into the spectrum of care, we really make it so it's a la carte. So, you don't have your meals there, you don't have all of your utilities, you decide what you want to do and what you want to kind of pay for. I don't know if there's anything else you want to kind of add to the use, but we love this area of West Side Omaha, and we're excited to be a part of the development.
And Gretchen's here for design, and she'll walk you through a very quick, we told her to stick to 1 minute overview of the design, and we're here for questions.
Hi there, I'm Gretchen Camp from ESG. We're at 500 South Washington in Minneapolis. We're really excited. This will be our first project in Omaha as well. We've been eyeing the city for a number of years, so we're really excited to be part of this really, what we feel is a really unique development. So this is an image of the building exterior when you're standing in the parking lot of the temple. 4-story development. If you're familiar with the site, there's a major topography change as you come down Sterling Drive. Down here is the lowest point of the site, and up here is the high point of the site. So really from this end here, the building appears to be a 3-story building, but as you go down the road there, when you get into the lower topography, it's a 4-story building. So that's a view from the temple. And then this is a view of the exterior of the building. We have some surface parking behind the building. And I'll show you that in a 3D view here. So this is a view as you're looking, actually the temple is here, and there's a kind of a series of walking area, beautiful landscaping planned just south of our building. So this is kind of, you can see the massing of the project. We'll have surface parking accessed from this drive here as you go down Sterling. And then as you go around, as you continue down, there'll be an access point to a lower level parking. And that looks like, here's a site plan. When you're coming down here, when you're driving onto the surface parking, here's the access point. And then as you continue down the drive to the underground is here. Because of the topography, this is really buried. And really what you'll see is the main entrance to the project here. As Mary said, lots of amenities for the project, and those will be very prominent as a activation of the streetscape. And then we'll have walk-up units as well. So those items, or the boxes in purple, are units that have walkouts onto the sidewalk. And then just lastly, I'll just show you the lower level parking, again, is kind of buried into the hillside, taking advantage of the topography. And then the building plan above, floors 2 through 4, kind of shapes out like that. If you have other questions about the architecture, we're available.
What are the sizes of the units going to be on average?
Range, actually, here's a summary. I don't know if I need to zoom in, but units range, there's kind of a small 1-bedroom all the way to a large 2-bedroom. So it ranges from $575 to about $1,275 for a large 2-bedroom.
And maybe
There's
just,
kind of the mix.
we're teaming up with the Carlyle Group out of Washington, D.C., a large private equity group. They are administering a large amount of their investment in this product type. We see a big wave of baby boomers, and they built some in the last 5 years, and they've seen what's leasing well, and they found that a small, medium, and large works well of each a 1-bedroom and a 2-bedroom unit. They traditionally were building a larger average square footage, closer to 950. We're proposing 850 average, just because we want to offer some smaller unit types for the affordability of living in this complex in a small unit if you're single, versus having a couple in a large 2-bedroom, just offering a mix of unit types.
And so that's been done in other parts of the country. What about Omaha? Have you done the market research in Omaha to prove that there's a need for this?
That's a great question. We actually looked at the entire Midwest. We are doing 4 of these in Chicago. We're doing 4 of them in Minneapolis. And we like to look at other areas. It's very hard to find the criteria of demographics from a population density. It's got to be an aging population. There has to be incomes. We look at household values so people can sell their home and afford to live here. So what we do is we look in a 5-mile ring, and then we zoom in to what's within a 1-mile radius of retail walkability, et cetera. And this worked very, very well. This is actually one of the only areas within kind of a 2-mile radius left to right that actually hit all of our demographic requirements. So it meets ours, and then we've done our own market research with Carlyle's third-party groups that dive into the market once we analyze a specific submarket.
And I don't recall, I assume there are, but I don't recall if there are any other similar facilities, age-restricted facilities, in this market. Bellevue,
there's Bellevue. Most of those are independent living.
That's what I thought,
continuum
yeah.
of care. So that's the graduating continuum of care, and then also this local Sterling Ridge has a development within this master plan of similar independent assisted memory care. So this is really, our average age is 72, even though it's age restricted to 55 plus. So the demographic trends of who's leasing here is averaging 72. All of them are age restricted to 55 plus. Predominantly, they're single widowed women who want socialization. They'll pay for it. That's the stats of all the assets throughout the country. So we feel that this demographic here will support that. It's going to be luxury-based to feed off the retail and kind of the mix of uses.
So these are rental only, not buy-in?
These are rental only, not buy-in, so that's part of the affordability component
Are there
too.
dining facilities, or does everybody go out to eat?
We will, here, let me, this is probably, Rich, this is the most unique part about, I'm going to zoom out here.
So ground floor, the amenity space kind of space planned.
So this is when you walk in Plan North, the vestibule, you have a lobby, you have business center, outdoor pool. Dining facility is basically for feeding of continental style breakfast. We're not preparing meals on site. We actually build a back of house kitchen in the event that 10, 20 years down the road you ever want to prepare meals. We actually backstop shaft to the roof if you ever wanted to put in a kitchen to serve lunch. But other than that, everything's brought in. We'll cater local restaurants to support them to bring in lunch a la carte. So you'll have a fob. You'll be able to swipe it if you want lunch that day. If you don't want it, you don't have to eat it, but it's all brought in from catering within the surrounding community.
So you found that we have an aging community with money within 2 miles of that area.
You're correct.
And single women, older women.
So Omaha's been pretty much a suburban home buying town.
Yep.
So this concept is going to be somewhat unique
It is
to
unique.
the area here.
You know, I'll tell you that it's unique in pretty much all the areas we enter into. I mean, we sell this from just ease of life. You know, the minute you wake up on this chart till when you go to bed, it's a range activities. So you're paying a premium than market rate, but you're paying a discount to the site that's right across the street for independent living. So you're paying $1,000 less compared to the property that's a block away, but you're getting unique circumstances. You're also not with an average age of 82 to 85. So you're almost a 10-year previous than that age cohort, but you're not going to live in a millennial driven where you're sharing the pool with people with younger demographics that are interested in different activities.
You mentioned luxury. The term luxury was used in your initial statement. Could you give me a working definition of luxury, because it differs between different parts of the country?
Yep, that's a great question. I think maybe just of what we do is we look for to be the best site and the best submarket and provide the best offerings of what's in the building. So from, this is a project in, it's 174 units in Minneapolis. Wayzata is a high-end suburb, similar demographics of incomes. And what we do is it's from the outside in until the minute you walk through the door to utilizing the amenities. So it's got to have, the amenity offerings, the pool, the sauna, the locker rooms, the business center. It's really the offerings and the amenities that we haven't seen in this market to offer that rent premium. And it's also the materials used. It's underground parking. It's not all surface parking. And it's also within the area. It's got to be walkable. It's not going to be in a strip center in a crosswalk with the retail not supporting it. So we start high level, we zoom in, and then we look at within the building and kind of creating that atmosphere of finishes coupled with amenity offerings.
We also, we toured a ton of buildings that are around the area and kind of looking at the styles and that sort of thing. And obviously Gretchen and her team do a ton of that to dive in.
And here's I'll just throw up a few so you can kind of see the level of quality. These are just kind of the common area that we're going to be offering here. That's in Minneapolis.
What's the rental range?
The rental rates are going to be, so we view the market as $150 per square foot to $185, and these rents will be in the $240 per square foot range. And I believe the independent living right across the street is $450 to $4 a foot. So we're a discount to the offerings right across the street, but we're a premium to the market rate.
So that 240, that would include utilities and everything?
This is we're going to confuse you with charts and a lot of stuff going on here, but I think this is important because this is, when we're looking at delivering a new product, this is the rent premium. On the left, the red bar is a one bedroom. In the middle, the red bars are one bedroom. And then to the right, the red bar is a one bedroom for independent living. So as you can see, we fit in the middle.
Can't go anymore. Okay.
Yep, zoom in a little bit more.
There you go.
So what does that include then?
So the gross numbers, utilities, which is meals, cleaning, and cleaning. Meals, cleaning, and utilities is the top. So the yellow is the meals, the purple is the cleaning and utilities. So the net number, even if you pull all that stuff out, You're still a
That's the
discount.
gut check. The gut check is, hey, if these people weren't required to pay for food, utilities, housekeeping, are we still kind of a discount to that independent living?
And that's your 240 number?
240 is us.
The 240, correct.
Yeah.
So all the cleaning and the food and everything would be on top?
Yep, correct.
Okay.
Good question.
Okay. I'm older than I look, so.
And we toured all the
ready to move
Bellevues, et
in?
cetera, so.
You're looking for the place across the
Yeah.
street.
When you said 75-year-old women,
You're
single.
right. That's why I said that. Yeah.
Okay, anybody else?
We're just excited to be here, and thank you for your time.
Oh, thank you. Any other proponents? Any proponent? Proponent. Proponent.
My name's John Waldbaum, 714 North 158th Street. I'm the chair of the Building and Grounds Committee for the Temple Israel. I'm the chair of the Site Coordinating Committee for the Tri-Faith Initiative. I've been involved in the project since the beginning. I helped all the entities acquire the sites. We're in favor of this project. It matches up with what we have done in the past, what we dreamed about. The quality of the developer is good. Their history across the country is good. The amenities that they're going to provide are good. I checked with all of my counterparts in the other congregations this morning. They're all in favor of the project. We've all had other congregants asking us when this type of project would be built. We have an aging population in our own congregations. We have members that are already in the assisted living center on Sterling Ridge site already, and we would welcome this project.
Thank you. Any other proponents? Any opponents?
Good afternoon. My name is Susie Dugan, 1848 South 138th Street. I am here representing, I am the president of the Montclair Trendwood Parkside Georgetown Neighborhood Association, or MTPG for short. I'm not even, excuse me, I'm not even sure that we're opposing it, but this was the first time we were made aware. We have 1,500 homes in that square mile directly west of this development. And we don't know what the impact is going to be. We don't know what the traffic will be. That's our main concern. I've been a part of the association for over 21 years. And when it was first proposed, we were very concerned about the connectivity principle between that Sterling Ridge Drive that empties out into 132nd. It goes directly into Trendwood Drive, which is part of our large residential area. When 132nd and Center was closed, we had, by actual count, over 400 extra cars going from Sterling Ridge Drive through our neighborhood, depositing out onto Pacific Street. And it was a real hazard. We're just here wondering why nobody told us about any of this. We're just curious as to what the impact will be on our neighborhood.
When you say, when you say no one told you about,
I found out about this, somebody sent me the planning board notice last week.
you are aware, I would presume, that over the last few years, the Sterling Wood development.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And you are aware
Yeah.
of what was proposed when this development was proposed.
Pretty much.
Okay, so your
Yeah.
your concern is about the
That connectivity on that, that's our main concern, yeah.
well.
And, yeah.
You may not have been notified because you're not within 300 feet.
Okay.
Is that the reason why she wouldn't have gotten?
That's the possibility.
Okay. I would just like for our neighbors to have some kind of input, and if not, you know, I can report back to them.
Okay. Anything else?
No, thank you.
Any other opponents? If not, public hearing is closed, and we get comments from the city. Oh, before we get that, Jim?
Sir. Jim
Uh,
Bouger, 10250 Regency
You know,
Circle.
this is my last meeting,
Yeah.
and, you know, when you guys came up here and did this project from the get-go, we had an incident. You remember?
You and I had an
No,
incident?
no.
We've got the tape.
The developers and trees.
Yeah, we did have a lot of issues. We had more than one
Trees.
incident, let me
Yeah,
just
yeah,
tell you
trees,
that.
trees.
So,
Any way we can do anything about trees?
we planted a lot of trees. We planted a lot of trees. We planted more trees than we said we were gonna plant,
Okay.
so.
Well, and you took out trees and
Yeah,
put more
you
trees.
took out
We
more
did.
trees than you were gonna take out,
And the
too.
city took trees away from us and we put more in. so.
Okay, I'm just trying to figure if I can, walk out smiling. I've got some trees for you.
Don't bring back the past on all that. There were some
Plant a
tough
tree
meetings.
for
so.
Arnold, please.
Yeah, put a tree in for me.
All right.
Okay.
I'll talk to Mr. Begley. I think he could probably arrange that.
Is,
So,
is
yeah.
Trammell Crow still part of these other buildings and everything else you talked about? When you guys mentioned that there's going to be a hotel and then there's going to be this project and then are we approving more than just this assisted living facility?
You're not approving anything more than
We're just doing the replat.
the senior housing, yes.
Okay. But is Trammell Crow doing the office buildings and the hotel and the?
No.
Oh.
No, that will be, and those projects are not before the board today. As you know, Chip Lockwood owns that land, and I would say it's more likely than not that Lockwood would develop those projects.
Okay.
Good, okay. City?
Oh, if one more comment, we did have a neighborhood meeting last night at the Temple. There were a lot of phone calls. I think the city will confirm that when they saw apartment in the agenda, that people got nervous about it, and we did, obviously at least one representative was here today, but we had 35 or 40 people at the meeting last night, and I think it went very well when they saw the type of product. And
You know what apartments do in Omaha?
yeah,
Okay.
you've seen that before. Thank you.
Mr. England?
Okay, just to touch base, Susie, this request would also need to go forward to City Council. So if you want to get together with the development team and, maybe exchange contact information, I'm sure they could help answer or address some of your questions. We're here for the major amendment to the mixed-use district development agreement, and Jim touched on it briefly. With the original development agreement, there was language in it that restricted building permits to be taken out on a few lots until the three religious assembly facilities and the Tri-Faith Center were built or, under construction. As mentioned, the three religious assemblies are either built or under construction, and we're under the understanding that the Tri-Faith Center will follow up here soon in the next year or two. So the department is comfortable with removing that language that was previously in there. I believe it was just I didn't work on the case, but it was the intent to make sure that this unique scenario was built as planned and not just have fast food gas stations and whatnot. So regarding the apartment or the actual facility that brought that forward, there were apartments planned for this area, and the department is comfortable with the proposed changes. That being said, the department's recommendation is approval of the major amendment to the Sterling Ridge Mixed-Use Development Agreement, subject to the 7 conditions listed in the recommendation report prior to forwarding to City Council.
I move approval of the major amendment to the Sterling Ridge Mixed-Use Development Agreement, subject to the following conditions, the 7 conditions prior to forwarding to City Council.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Can we have a roll call for the vote, please?
Kate?
Yes.
Carr? Yes. Rosenbaum?
Yes.
Megan?
Yes.
Rosecker?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
My first vote on the planning board was with the big vote that dealt with the Joffrey's Canyon.
Wow.
So many years ago, that's the Con Air development.
Yeah.
We have you to blame for that?
Yes, you do. My last vote on the planning board is going to be a yes with the Sterling Ridge development.
You gotta put that tree in, though.
Good luck.
Okay, now, we have a,
Minutes.
we have the,
Do we have a
vote.
copy of the minutes?
Do we have, oh, minutes? Which one?
You are here.
Okay. Can we have a motion for acceptance of the minutes of the December 6th meeting?
So moved.
And I have a motion and a second. Can we have a roll call for the vote, please?
Yes.
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 Abstain. Okay. Anything else?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. Could we have a roll call for the vote, please?
Megan?
Yes.
Rosacker?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Kate?
Yes.
Barnes? Yes. Rosenbaum?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
And era ends. Yes.
Don't be so excited, you're supposed to be sad.